The sun beat down on the pristine fairways of Trump International Golf Course, casting long shadows and highlighting the vibrant green of the meticulously maintained grass. Former President Donald Trump, a familiar figure on these greens, was enjoying a leisurely round of golf. His swing was relaxed, his demeanor calm, as he chatted with his companions and focused on his game. But the tranquility of the day was shattered in an instant. The serene atmosphere, filled with the soft sounds of nature and the occasional thwack of a golf club, was abruptly disrupted. A shot rang out, echoing across the manicured lawns. Panic erupted as the sharp crack of gunfire pierced the air, sending golfers and spectators alike into a frenzy. A shadow had fallen on the green, a shadow of violence that threatened to stain the sanctity of the day. The once peaceful scene was now marred by fear and uncertainty. Security personnel, their faces etched with urgency, sprang into action. Their training kicked in as they moved swiftly to secure the area and protect those in danger. Their movements were swift, precise, trained for moments like these. They communicated with each other through earpieces, coordinating their efforts to ensure the safety of everyone present. The crowd of onlookers watched, stunned, as the scene unfolded before them. Faces that had been relaxed and smiling moments before were now contorted with fear and confusion. A chilling question hung in the air. Was this the unthinkable, an attempt on the life of a former president on American soil? The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on everyone present, as they grappled with the reality of what had just occurred. The alleged gunman, apprehended within minutes of the incident, was identified as 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh. His capture was swift, but the story behind his actions was anything but simple. His face, plastered across news channels within hours, was a study in contrasts. The media frenzy painted him as a villain, but his visage told a more complex story. A weathered brow spoke of a life lived under the open sky, perhaps a life of hardship and toil. His hands were calloused, perhaps from years of manual labor, hinting at a man who was no stranger to hard work and perseverance. But it was his eyes that held the most chilling tale. They were windows to a soul tormented by inner demons. They burned with a cold fury, a simmering rage that hinted at a darkness within. It was as if his eyes were a portal to a storm brewing inside him. As investigators delved into Routh's past, a picture began to emerge of a man consumed by a singular obsession: the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. His life seemed to revolve around this distant war. Routh, a vocal supporter of Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression, had reportedly become radicalized. His passion for the cause had morphed into something far more dangerous. His online footprint was littered with extremist content and calls for violent action. Social media posts revealed a man who had crossed the line from advocacy to extremism, leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs that painted a disturbing picture of his radicalization. The manhunt for Routh was swift and decisive. Law enforcement agencies, working with the precision of a well-oiled machine, tracked him down within hours of the incident. Images of his capture, broadcast on every major news network, showed a man seemingly resigned to his fate. The look of fury that had contorted his features earlier was gone, replaced by a chilling blankness. The arrest brought a collective sigh of relief across the nation. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the scars of the day ran deep. The incident served as a stark reminder of the volatile times we live in, a world where political discourse is increasingly weaponized, and violence lurks just beneath the surface. News of the assassination attempt sent shockwaves across the nation. From the hallowed halls of Congress to the bustling streets of Times Square, a collective gasp of disbelief rippled through the country. How could this happen? How could an attempt on the life of a former president occur in broad daylight, in a nation that prides itself on its peaceful transfer of power? Political leaders from both sides of the aisle were quick to condemn the attack. President Joe Biden, his voice heavy with concern, addressed the nation from the Oval Office, calling for unity and a rejection of violence in all its forms. Former rivals set aside their differences, united in their condemnation of the senseless act. Section 5. A life upended. In the aftermath of the attack, the nation grappled with the question of why. The shockwaves reverberated through communities, leaving people in a state of disbelief and fear. Conversations in homes, workplaces, and public spaces were dominated by the need to understand the motives behind such a heinous act. Who was Ryan Wesley Routh, and what drove him to such a desperate act? His face, now plastered across every news outlet, became synonymous with tragedy and confusion. As investigators peeled back the layers of his life, they uncovered a story of a man teetering on the edge, his world a jumble of conspiracy theories and extremist ideologies. His descent into darkness was gradual, marked by increasing isolation and radicalization. Routh, it turned out, was a familiar face in online forums dedicated to the Ukraine conflict. These forums, often echo chambers of misinformation, provided a fertile ground for his growing discontent. His posts, often rambling and incoherent, painted a picture of a man consumed by a warped sense of justice, convinced that violence was the only answer. His words were a mix of anger, frustration, and a misguided belief that he was fighting for a noble cause. The internet, once a source of entertainment and connection, had become a breeding ground for his rage. It was here that he found a community that validated his darkest thoughts, pushing him further into the abyss. The digital world, with its anonymity and lack of accountability, became the perfect storm for his radicalization. Section 6. The Ukrainian Connection. As the investigation into Ruth's background deepened, a disturbing connection emerged. His fascination with the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Routh, it seemed, had become fixated on the conflict, his online activity revealing a pattern of increasingly radicalized views. He saw himself as a warrior for a cause, a lone wolf fighting against the forces of tyranny. Ruth's social media posts were littered with pro-Ukrainian propaganda, often laced with violent rhetoric. He had even attempted to contact Ukrainian paramilitary groups, offering his services as a fighter. His pleas, however, were met with silence. Undeterred, Routh's obsession festered, fueled by a steady diet of online extremism. Section 7. The Kremlin's Shadow. The assassination attempt sent shockwaves far beyond America's borders. In Moscow, the Kremlin watched with a mixture of amusement and disdain. Russian state-controlled media, known for its penchant for propaganda, spun a narrative that painted Ruth as a symptom of America's own internal divisions. Vladimir Putin, the architect of the Ukraine conflict, used the incident to further his own agenda. In a carefully orchestrated speech, he condemned the attack while simultaneously accusing the West of fueling the flames of instability. The assassination attempt, he argued, was a direct consequence of America's reckless foreign policy. Section 8. A World on Edge. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump served as a chilling reminder of the fragility of peace in the 21st century. It highlighted the ease with which individuals can be radicalized online, their minds warped by a steady diet of hate and disinformation, and it underscored the urgent need for a global effort to combat extremism in all its forms. The world watched with bated breath as the investigation into the assassination attempt unfolded. The incident served as a wake-up call, a stark reminder that the forces of chaos and division are always lurking, waiting for an opportunity to exploit our vulnerabilities. Section 9. The Price of Division. In the aftermath of the attack, America was forced to confront a difficult truth: the price of its own internal divisions. The country had become increasingly polarized in recent years, riven by partisan gridlock and a toxic political climate. Social media, once a tool for connection, had become a weapon for sowing discord and amplifying extremism. The assassination attempt was a stark reminder of the consequences of this division. When political discourse descends into hatred and vitriol, it creates fertile ground for violence to take root. The time had come for America to heal its divisions, to rediscover the values of civility and respect that had long been the bedrock of its democracy. Section 10. Safeguarding our future. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump served as a stark reminder of the importance of protecting our leaders and safeguarding our democracy. It underscored the critical role of law enforcement agencies in preventing acts of violence and brought into sharp focus the need for enhanced security measures in a world where threats can emerge from anywhere. The incident also highlighted the need for greater vigilance in the digital realm. Social media companies faced renewed scrutiny for their role in allowing extremist content to flourish on their platforms. The challenge of combating online radicalization, while complex, was one that could no longer be ignored. Section 11. A Call for Unity. In the wake of the assassination attempt, a sense of shared vulnerability settled over the nation. The attack, regardless of one's political affiliation, was an assault on the very fabric of American democracy. It was a stark reminder that violence and extremism have no place in a civilized society. The incident served as a call for unity, a reminder that despite our differences, we are all Americans. It was a time to put aside partisan rancor and come together as one nation, indivisible, determined to preserve the ideals of freedom, justice, and the peaceful transfer of power that had defined America for generations.